You know those people who seem unshakable? The ones who go cold, shut down, and disappear the moment things start to get real? What if I told you that your avoidant ex, the one who seems so composed, is actually breaking down emotionally, and the signs are right in front of you? Hey, I'm Jim Rohn, and in today's video, I'm going to walk you through 3 subtle but powerful signs that your avoidant ex is not as detached as they seem. Most people misunderstand avoidant. They think it means a person doesn't care. But in truth, avoidance is a defense, a way to escape emotions that feel too intense, too vulnerable, too unsafe. And when you stop chasing, when you hold your silence, you trigger something deeper inside them, a loss of emotional control. They start slipping, from vague texts to quiet jealousy, to awkward attempts at connection. These are not mind games. These are cracks in the wall they've spent years building. Watch this video all the way through, because I'm not just going to help you decode their behavior. I'll show you how to hold your power, keep your boundaries, and choose yourself with clarity and compassion. If you're healing from a lopsided relationship, hit that subscribe button right now, because what I share here won't just help you survive, it will help you rise. Let's get into it. Here's what most people miss. Avoidant people don't go silent because they don't feel. They go silent because they feel too much, and they don't know what to do with it. When someone with an avoidant attachment style pulls away, disappears, or refuses to connect, your first thought might be, they just don't care. But the truth is far more complex. They're not cold, they're overwhelmed. Imagine inside them is a storm: emotions, fears, past wounds, present pressure swirling beneath the surface. But instead of learning how to stay present in the storm, how to self-regulate, how to communicate, they do the only thing they know: they disappear. Silence becomes their survival. This isn't about excusing their behavior, it's about clarity. Because if you don't understand the root of their silence, you might turn it inward. You might start thinking, what did I do wrong? But the truth is, you did nothing wrong. You simply walked into a space that was locked from the inside. A space where someone hasn't yet learned how to stay emotionally present with themselves, let alone with you. Their silence is not peace. It's the sound of an internal breakdown. It's a defense against feelings that feel too big, too unfamiliar, too dangerous. And if you're not careful, you'll mistake that silence as your fault. You'll start adjusting, overthinking, reaching out again and again, not out of connection, but out of panic. You'll abandon yourself trying to hold on to someone who's already emotionally gone. But understanding this doesn't mean staying. It means waking up. It means realizing, I don't need to earn love by tolerating silence. People who avoid intimacy often learned early in life that closeness is unsafe. They may have been punished for being vulnerable. They may have witnessed chaos around attachment. So when you show up with a genuine heart, they don't know what to do. Not because you're too much, but because they've never felt safe being seen. So they shut down. But that doesn't mean you need to shut down with them. Just because they've gone quiet doesn't mean you have to lose your voice. In fact, this is your moment to anchor in something deeper: self-respect. If you keep waiting, keep hoping, keep chasing, you're not loving. You're abandoning yourself. And that's not noble, that's painful. So let this truth land deeply. Avoidance isn't indifference, it's emotional overload. But no matter what's happening inside them, you still have the right to choose what's healthy for you. You don't need to rescue someone who's running from themselves. You just need to stay steady in your clarity, your boundaries, and your worth. After a long silence, suddenly, your avoidant ex reaches out, not with a clear apology, not with any specific intention, just a vague, emotionally flat message, something like, hey, how've you been? Or a random text that seems unrelated to anything meaningful between you two. You're confused. You wonder, what does this mean? What are they trying to say? And then you spend hours, maybe even days, trying to decode a conversation that lasted less than a minute. You get pulled back into a storm of hope, doubt, overthinking, and emotional whiplash. But here's the truth. This isn't a mind game, and you don't need to play. These mixed signals, strange messages, half apologies, or emotional check-ins, they're not manipulation. They're signs of internal emotional confusion. Avoidants don't escape emotion, they just don't know what to do with it. When you stop chasing, when you hold your silence, when you no longer leave the door wide open for them to slip back in, something in them starts to panic. Not because they're ready to reconnect, but but because their old attachment blueprint is cracking. So, in the confusion of rising emotion they don't understand, they may send these half-hearted signals, a kind of emotional radar ping. Are you still there? Will you still forgive me? Can I re-enter without facing myself? They're not trying to hurt you, but they are stumbling in the dark. They're not clear, they're not grounded, they're not courageous enough to be honest, and not detached enough to walk away cleanly. The result? You're left holding fragments of their hesitation. And if you're not careful, those scraps can reawaken your hope just because they responded. But here's the moment of truth. Does that response actually honor your heart? A vague message is not intention. A blurry apology is not accountability. A sudden text, followed by silence, is not love, it's fear disguised as connection. Understand this, they're not manipulating, they're lost. They feel pulled to come close but terrified of it at the same time. They crave contact, but are afraid that one more step toward you will unleash emotions they've never been taught how to handle. That inner war, the clash between desire and fear, plays out in their behavior. A late-night text, a subtle like on your story, a random question that feels emotionally loaded but goes nowhere. These are not reconnection. They're brief collisions between an unready heart and the space your absence has left behind. Here's what matters most. You don't have to respond just because you feel guilty or because you still care. Feelings alone aren't enough to sustain a healthy relationship. Love, the kind that heals and lasts, requires clarity, courage, and emotional accountability. So when they come back with half effort, ask yourself, am I meeting the emotional needs of someone who isn't ready to grow? Am I sacrificing my clarity just to hold on to a sliver of hope? Am I betraying myself just to avoid disappointing them? If the answer is yes, it's time to stop. Stop not because you stopped loving them, but because you finally started loving yourself the right way. They may not yet know how to step out of the avoidant loop, but you, the one who endured the silence, the one who chose stillness not as strategy but as awakening, you don't need to return to what made you lose yourself. Because if you keep responding, keep opening your heart, keep offering chances, without seeing consistent, intentional, emotionally mature effort, you're repeating the same pattern. They test, you carry, and in the end, you get hurt. Real love cannot grow in confusion. It only thrives in the light of clarity, responsibility, and emotional courage. So if they reach out with a blurry text, stay silent if you need to. If they offer a half-hearted apology, wait for real action before you open up. And if they try to emotionally check in, listen to your intuition, not your emotional deprivation. You deserve a love that's clear, not a flickering signal that comes and goes like a faulty connection. There comes a moment after a long stretch of silence from an avoidant partner when they begin to surface again, but not with a clear apology, not with sincere intention. They return with emotional fragments, inconsistent actions, cryptic messages, and emotionally confusing behavior that can make you feel hopeful and unsettled at the same time. Their return is not emotional awakening, it's emotional unraveling. And unless you're grounded in your self-worth, you might mistake this emotional chaos for love coming back. It's not. Avoidants often live in a bubble of control. They're not detached because they feel nothing, they feel plenty. But their emotional language is limited. Their internal map for connection is skewed. So instead of sharing, they suppress. Instead of expressing, they shut down. For a while, this works until it doesn't. Blaze. Suppression builds pressure, and when it breaks without order or maturity. What you start seeing are not signs of healing, they're signs of someone losing emotional control. It may begin with sudden emotional oversharing. Out of nowhere, they might send you a long message pouring out thoughts, loneliness, or pain they've never shared before. You're shocked. This is someone who once avoided every meaningful conversation, now confessing a deep sadness. You want to believe it means they're finally opening up. But be careful, this doesn't automatically mean they're ready to show up. Often, these emotional outbursts aren't signs of clarity, they're the overflow of long-suppressed feelings spilling out in messy, unstructured ways. Right after this outpouring, you might see them become unusually defensive. As confusing as it sounds, this is normal for avoidants unraveling emotionally. One moment they share, the next they pull back, lash out, or shut you down. Why? Because vulnerability, for them, is terrifying. They didn't mean to open that door so wide, and now they're scrambling to close it again. Their system is overloaded, their defenses are cracking, and you're witnessing them flinch under their own emotional weight. And then comes the subtle, silent jealousy. An avoidant won't tell you, "I miss you," or "I don't want you to be with anyone else." But suddenly, they're watching your stories more closely. They're interacting with your content after weeks of silence. They send strange messages when they sense you're happy without them. They might not say it, but you feel it. They're uncomfortable seeing you moving on. This jealousy doesn't come from healthy love. It comes from the fear of losing control over what once felt familiar. They don't want closeness, but they also can't tolerate emotional distance that they didn't initiate. It's not about wanting you in a mature, committed way. It's about panic, because now you're no longer orbiting around them. You've stepped out. And for someone who survived by controlling the emotional dance, that's terrifying. But here's the mistake many people make. They interpret this loss of control as romantic sincerity. They think they're finally opening up, they must still care. But that's not necessarily true. They might feel more than before, but feelings without responsibility are just chaos. You don't owe anyone a second chance just because they're breaking down. Their emotional messiness is not your invitation to save them. It's their signal to finally face their own inner work. Because if you return too soon while they're still in chaos, still reactive, still afraid of vulnerability, you'll fall right back into the cycle. They retreat, you chase, they lash out, you explain, they confuse, you overextend. Let me say this clearly. Their unraveling is not your responsibility. Yes, they may be confronting pain they've buried for years. Yes, they might be hurting in ways they can't even describe. But unless they're willing to take ownership, seek healing, and engage you with consistency and courage, you are not the emotional caretaker of their storm. You, the one who endured silence, unpredictability, and emotional distance. You don't have to lower your standards just because someone is unraveling. You don't have to call chaos closeness. You don't have to translate their emotional confusion into meaning. If they overshare, observe it with compassion, but don't abandon your boundaries. If they become defensive, don't explain yourself endlessly just to soothe their trigger. If they grow jealous, don't confuse their possessiveness with passion. That's not love. That's fear in disguise. True love requires maturity, presence, responsibility, and clarity. Not a sudden wave of feelings with no structure. Not messages written in emotional panic. Not jealousy disguised as interest. So if they're unraveling, let them. You don't have to interrupt their fall just because you care. You can care and choose yourself. You can feel empathy without offering yourself up as a lifeboat. You are not here to absorb someone else's emotional reckoning. Let them feel it. Let them face it. Let them grow through it or not. But you move forward not because you don't love them, but because you finally love yourself more. One of the most painful moments in a relationship with an avoidant person isn't just when they disappear, it's when you offer something real from your heart, and they respond with silence. That kind of silence hits you in a way nothing else does. You start questioning yourself. Did I do something wrong? Was I too much? Did I push them away? You find yourself replaying old messages, conversations, body language, trying to find some proof that you caused the disconnection. But here's the truth. You are not the problem. You are not too much. And you never deserved silence in return for sincerity. When someone with an avoidant attachment style doesn't respond, it's easy to assume they don't love you, or worse, that you're unlovable. But that's not what's really happening. Their lack of response is not a reflection of your worth, it's a reflection of their emotional capacity. Avoidant people often aren't running from you, they're running from intimacy itself. They learned, often from a very young age, that closeness is dangerous, vulnerability is risky, and emotional expression is a threat. So when you offer connection, closeness, or emotional depth, you're not doing anything wrong. But you're touching the deepest fear they carry, being engulfed by emotion and intimacy. Their silence is self-protection, not insight. And regardless of their reasons, you still have every right to protect your own heart. Non-response is a form of withdrawal. It communicates clearly that they're not emotionally present. And the more you try to earn a response, explain your value, or reignite their attention, the more you begin to abandon your own emotional dignity. You cannot teach someone the value of closeness by staying in a connection where they are absent. You cannot make someone learn how to love by accepting chronic emotional starvation. And you don't have to shrink your emotional needs to keep someone who won't meet you halfway. Their silence isn't a statement about your worth, it's about the limits of their emotional coping. But you were never meant to be the translator of someone else's dysfunction. You don't have to keep understanding them at the cost of being unseen, because at some point, empathy without boundaries becomes self-neglect. Self-respect says, I don't stay where my emotions are ignored. Self-worth says, I don't wait to be chosen only when someone feels like losing me. Oh, and self-love says, I don't need to convince someone of my value. You deserve a connection where your voice is heard, your presence is acknowledged, and your heart is responded to not because you fought for it, but because that's the bare minimum of healthy love. When they don't respond, take that as your cue to return to yourself. Return to what you need. Someone who doesn't just feel, but expresses. Someone who doesn't only return when they fear losing you, but who chooses you consistently. Someone who doesn't need to be convinced to see your value. Because the truth is, everything you were craving from the avoidant, you're already capable of giving to yourself. You want to be seen, so begin truly seeing yourself. You want to be loved, so love yourself enough not to return to a place that abandoned you. You want to be cherished, so raise your standards so high that no one can ignore your worth and still stay in your life. You don't need to earn love. You just need to stop handing it to people who can't reciprocate. Their silence doesn't make you small. Their lack of response doesn't make you invisible. They might not reply to your messages, but you are still someone of depth, value, and emotional presence, fully deserving of a love that is clear, intentional, and fully here. If you've ever loved someone with an avoidant attachment style, you know what it feels like waiting endlessly, explaining yourself over and over, aching in the silence, and feeling invisible in a relationship you cared deeply about. Let me tell you this clearly. You are not crazy. You are not weak. You just love someone who wasn't ready to face themselves, and that says nothing about your worth. The truth is, you can love someone deeply, even understand every layer of their trauma, and still choose to walk away. Not because you stopped loving them, but because you finally started loving yourself more. You have the right to want clarity. You have the right to expect consistency. You have the right to walk away from any dynamic that asks you to constantly prove your worth. Your silence when you choose not to chase anymore is not punishment. It's your deepest declaration of self-respect. I don't have to chase to feel worthy. I deserve full presence, not haunting disappearances. I will no longer shrink myself just to keep someone comfortable. Your avoidant ex may be on their own journey, and that's okay. But you don't have to put your life on pause waiting for them to finish it. You can move forward, grounded, whole, and free. Healing doesn't come from changing them. Healing begins the moment you decide, I am enough even if they never saw it.